We don't necessarily have to be the greatest subject matter expert, but we have to be able to integrate the content into the sales process. But we start with the teacher's mentality. Something magical happens when your buyer sees you not just as a salesperson, but as an educator, because educators care. And so when we teach, though, we develop a unique relationship with the buyer. When the buyer views us as a teacher, as an expert, as a trusted advisor, the relationship changes. And they view us differently than they view every other salesperson. This is the goal that we must attain as sales professionals. We first want to be seen as a teacher. Being seen as a teacher makes us an authority. If we're an authority, we can have greater influence on the prospect, enhancing our abilities in sales. And so what can we do? Well, to be that teacher, we don't necessarily have to be the greatest subject matter expert, but we have to be able to integrate the content into the sales process. But we start with the teacher's mentality. What's going to make it so they truly see you as an educator, not just a hack, right? If you just send some content, what if the content's not good? So what does the content have to look like? They have to be unbiased, the content that is. It needs to feel to the viewer, to the consumer, that yes, this person, this organization has my best interest at heart. You got to be willing to call a spade a spade. You got to be willing to talk about the pros and the cons of the thing, of the decision, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And furthermore, you should be talking about their true questions, fears, worries, concerns, not shying away from them, not afraid that they're going to ask about them and hoping that they don't in that sales call, but knowing that they probably will, or at least they're probably thinking about it. And so therefore, you're going to talk about it. You're going to address it. And with assignment selling, you're going to ask them to do something about it. You're not going to just be like everybody else and meet with them. No, you're going to ask them to do an assignment. Now, what gives you the right to ask them to do an assignment? Fact of the matter is, he or she that produces content has greater rights than he or she who does not produce content, who is not seen as a teacher. If you are my prospect, I can ask you all day long to read a 30-page guide because I produce the best guide in the world on how to buy a fiberglass pool. That is my right to ask you to do because that's what my organization has produced. But I can't ask you to do that if we didn't produce it, especially if it's not ours. I'm not going to send you a 30-page guide that somebody else produced. No, what we produced, that's going to answer your specific questions. I'm going to give you the why behind why it's so important that you take the time to read it or the time to review it. So keep that in mind. Much of assignment selling is bold. You got to be bold to ask people to do things. You got to be bold as a salesperson to give them an assignment. But the more that you give them to do and the more they're willing to do, the more they are aligned and committed to you as the sales professional. And that is a great place to be. So make sure that you keep that in mind as you move forward with assignment selling. The other beautiful element of assignment selling is that it leads to immediate ROI with respect to your digital sales and marketing and initiative. What would happen if you produced a piece of content, let's say a great video today, that addressed a major question or concern that your prospects often have? And tomorrow, on a sales appointment, after you produced it today, you used it in the sales appointment. And because you used it, they saw the answer and they were able to overcome the concern and they were able to move past it, and therefore you were able to make that sale. You see, that's an immediate ROI of they ask, you answer. But it starts with teaching your sales team. You must teach your sales team immediately, once you start to produce content, how to integrate content into the sales process. And that's why when somebody says to me, so how long does it take the Ask You Answer to work? It can work tomorrow if your sales team starts using content in the sales process today. So we've established that as salespeople, we teach. Hopefully, eventually we sell, but we teach. And if we took much of the communications of your sales team, are they very teacher-oriented? So for example, if your sales team is confirming a meeting with a prospect, or if you're following up with a prospect, do you just send an email saying I'm following up? Or do you continue to teach, potentially addressing through text, through video, through content, some of the questions or concerns that they previously had? I can tell you from my experience of training now thousands of salespeople that most do not have this approach like they should, especially with email. We've gotten very lazy with this. There is a better way, and that's the mindset and the mentality that we must have. So what should great assignment selling look like? Of course, there's different ways you can do it. You could do it with a video email, one-to-one, like a Vidyard, which is a wonderful way to do it. You could do assignment selling on the phone call itself when you're talking with the prospect. You could do it through email. I much prefer talking with the person directly. Then next would be video. Then next would be phone in terms of what I would suggest to you. Because the key to doing assignment selling the right way is twofold. You want to explain the why, and you want to make sure you get the commitment. If you don't explain the why to the assignment, they're just going to think you're giving them some work. If you don't get the commitment, then there's a good chance that they won't do it. So if I'm giving an assignment, for example, if I am giving an assignment for my swimming pool company, I would want to, if I'm going to say to you, I want you to read this particular buying guide, I'm not just going to say, so here's a buying guide. Will you read it? That's not how it works. I want to make sure that I say, here's what you're going to see in the buying guide. Here's the things that it's going to talk about. And some of the mistakes it would help you prevent because it's addressing these things. And so by them hearing that, they hear the why to them doing the actual homework. And then of course, when I'm done, I want to ask them, will you take the time to review these things? It's a very critical part of effective assignment selling. And so you don't want to miss that part. And so make sure, regardless of how you do it, that you always include the why, and then you get a commitment from the prospect. By doing that, you're going to be much more effective. Think about all the things we learn about a prospect when we ask them to do homework. Now, assuming we set it up the right way, as we've discussed, assuming that we give them the why and then get the actual commitment, it shows you so much about them in terms of hot buttons before the initial sales call. Very, very powerful. But it also tells you how committed they are as a prospect. If somebody says yes, absolutely, to your assignment, this means they are looking for value. If somebody says no, and I've experienced this before myself, they say, I don't have the time, it generally means one thing. If they're not looking to become more educated on that particular product or service, it means they're basing their buying decision on what? Yeah, probably just price. And they don't really want to know the difference between you and your competitor. They just want to know, what's the brass tacks? What's the price? And if that's the situation, you're best off knowing when to hold them, knowing when to fold them. The greatest day in the life of a business is not knowing necessarily who they are, but it's knowing who they're not. Because when you know who you're not and what you're not, that's when you know who's not a good fit for your business, for your organization. And assignment selling, it helps you to know that much, much faster. So let's talk about using assignment selling in follow-up emails. Yeah, I mean, instead of sending out the "Are we breaking up?" email, you can now send out the subject line that says, "With respect to that," we'll call it issue, or "Mike, regarding that question about," but we want to use their name and we want to say something very specific to a need, an issue, a concern that they had, a fear, whatever that thing is, in the subject line. In the body of the email, we could say something as simple as, "So Mike, when we met previously, you mentioned 2 specific fears that you had about moving forward with this project. I've created a video here that addresses these 2 things in detail. And this way you can not only view it, but your team can view it as well. I will follow up with you tomorrow to get your thoughts and feedback." Now, why is this better than the, "Hey, are you still interested, yes or no?" For obvious reasons, but what's going to happen here is that this prospect, Mike, is now going to let me know in response, "Hey, Marcus, you know what, to save you time, we've already made a decision to go somewhere else," which, by the way, if he says that's not a bad thing because I've stopped wasting time with Mike, or Mike will say, "Hey, thanks for this, really appreciate it, look forward to the follow-up." So if you're looking to have another call, have another conversation, assignment selling, once again, is a more effective means than simply saying, "Hey, touching base, did you want to hop on another call so we can talk about any questions or concerns that you have?" That is standard terrible sales communication 101. We can do better than that. Assignment selling, once again, is the key to more effective communication. So we're doing they ask, you answer. And if we're doing they ask, you answer, we understand that it starts with sales. This is a sales initiative, but we've got to have the content for the sales team to integrate into the sales process. You know, there's a super quick litmus test that you can use for your content right now, and that is this. If you produce the content, or if it's already available on your site, could your sales team integrate it right now? In other words, would they be thrilled that it was in their sales toolbox and they were rocking and rolling with it? Or would they say to themselves, "Why in the world has this been produced by the marketing team?" This is why the sales team should be very involved in the editorial calendar, the planning of the content. They should pipe up and say, "I haven't ever gotten that question. That's kind of dumb." Or "Nobody's ever asked me that." Or "Guys, why aren't we mentioning this? I get asked this question all the time." If that's the case, we need to make sure that they are there. That's key. So they need to be involved in this planning. If they're involved in the planning and then they're involved in the production, remember, they got to understand the what, the how, and the why, the impact this is going to have on them, then they're much more likely to use it in the sales process. And don't forget, we must teach the sales team how to integrate it into the sales process. Don't just assume that they're naturally going to get it. But step 1, got to have the right content. It's got to be about the buyers, about their fears, about their worries. And if it's about that, now we can start to integrate it into the sales process. As for moving forward, make sure you script out these assignments, that you practice it with your sales team, that you make it part of your sales team meetings, that you include somebody in marketing in those sales team meetings, that you include somebody in sales in those marketing meetings, that you find the alignment that you're looking for. and that you watch the morale of your teams grow and grow and grow. This is what's possible. That's the beauty behind the Ask You Answer. We've seen this again and again, and I know we're going to see it with you. Again, I'm Marcus Sheridan from Impact, and I'm so grateful you took the time to learn all about what is assignment selling.